Hi, everybody. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Right now rotating out the artwork. People keep asking about the paintings, and I'm trying to decide whether I keep them here or put them somewhere else, and then have some more paintings on the way. But everybody misses them for some reason. It seems like you guys like Gustav Klimt and Waterhouse. So maybe we'll bring him back. Who knows? So anyway, what do we got? We got anything going on today? Well, it's Sunday, beautiful Sunday, fun day. And I guess there's a vote going on. There's stuff happening. The ITN. Originally some history. I wanted to call the ITN replicant. And primarily because I wanted to create a Blade Runner protocol for it. If you guys are fans of Ridley Scott's Blade Runner back in the day, the 1980s, you'll remember that replicants have a finite lifespan. And if they kind of go crazy and go rogue, they had a group of people called Blade Runners to go and find them and kill them. So anyway, I said, hey, it would be really cool if we call the testnet replicant and we build a protocol to basically destroy it. And my marketing people were, oh, that'll confuse people. Don't call it that. Just call it the ITN. I said, okay. I was actually pretty upset about it because I bought a trench coat. I actually had Deckard's trench coat from Blade Runner. I had a movie prop made. And I was like, yeah, all right, I finally get to live my Blade Runner fantasies. So anyway, fast forward 6 months. And basically, I was under the belief that the ITN was going to run out of rewards June 29th. That's what calculated early in the month. And we suddenly realized that it actually was June 19th. And we only realized that upon another reflection right about the middle part of the month, June 15th. So we were thinking, well, looks like the replicant has grown up and there's no Blade Runner floating around. Maybe this thing could actually have a life beyond its original intent and be valuable to the entire ecosystem. And we had some plans to say, well, why don't we build a nice voting experience for that and a good communication plan for that. And that tail got cut by 10 days because of that miscalculation. So we started thinking about it. We said, all right, well, we'll talk to the community. We'll let them know. And if we're going to do something, we have to kind of treat the ITN like its own thing. We have to actually kind of treat it like it is its own currency. It's its own network. Because at the end of the day, the model here would be that Cardano is subsidizing another system to provide value to it. Okay, it's been doing that for 6 months implicitly, but we're now explicitly explaining that to people. So what we did is we said, if you're a stake pool operator on the 19th, go ahead and just leave your stake pool running, and at least let Cardano, the network, know that that group of people are available for hire. Now, that threshold was crossed. The vast majority of operators left their pools on, and they said, well, if you guys want us for something else, we're here for business. But, we have to treat the ITN like it's its own thing. So we said anybody who has testnet ADA, T-ADA, there's this thing called JORVote, and it was released on the 26th. And I included a link in my tweet for this, and I'll include it in the show notes here. Whereas if you hold testnet ADA, you can vote, and basically the vote is, do you want to extend the rewards of test data to go into the month of July? Now, that's step one, functionally. And the reason being is that testnet ADA is in no way connected to Cardano. It's in no way connected to ADA holders. It's just an extension of a parallel chain saying, hey, we're going to start paying it out, keep compensating the stake pool operators, but they don't really get anything for that unless step two happens, which would be a vote that occurs next month. And that vote that occurs next month would be basically, do you want to rent for another month the ITN or not? Okay. Now, we have some great things coming at the summit, the virtual summit, specifically in the realm of democracy. And I'm not going to front run the announcement here, but I think people are going to be super happy and excited about it. And there are just beautiful things coming. And it's really unfortunate that the rewards ran out in June 19th instead of the 29th, because we would have gotten past the summit and people would have seen those great things and started getting an aha moment of what we could do with the ITN. But despite that, still have about 27.5% participation within the ITN itself. And we may or may not cross a threshold to enable that hard fork. Should we not cross that threshold, then the ITN is as good as dead. and it's just going to go about the way and follow the original intent. And it's as if we named it replicant and as if we actually built that Blade Runner protocol to kill it. If it does cross that threshold, then on the other side next month, probably around July 9th, we'll have a much better voting experience and a lot more clarity on what we can do with the ITN and where it can provide value to the Cardano ecosystem. That said, this is just an example of how hard it is to run a cryptocurrency and to have a cryptocurrency community react to things and do things. Cryptocurrencies are very strong when you want to stay consistent despite what's going on in the world. Okay, there can be plagues outside, wars going on, all kinds of things. And there's this old saying that honey badger don't care, Bitcoin don't care. Cryptocurrencies are super strong for that. Where they're weak is rapid decision making. When you have to make a decision a week or two, A or B, X or Y, because the social coordination of that is enormous. And frankly, to get good votes, you have to have a lot of really good tools. You have to have a beautiful voting experience. You have to be able to communicate with people accurately and succinctly. You have to allow lots of debate to form. You have to know that the ballot is sound. You have to know that the level of participation is where it needs to be. And this is among one of the most difficult things you can do anywhere, not just in the cryptocurrency space. And to do that for short-term events is quite hard. So when this experiment first started, I was very skeptical. My belief was that the most likely outcome was that we would not get enough participation with the ITN to even get to the second vote. And we're right at that threshold. And, holders of T-ADA, if you have it, will make that decision. If we get to that second vote, the burden then on us as a community to have good tools and good explanations of why will this produce value, create value for people in the Cardano ecosystem. But another point is that you have staging. You have to understand there are different constituencies here. One is that group of stake pool operators. They're small business owners, and they're providing value to all of us. They basically are running Cardano very soon after July 29th. August 18th is when I think the first blocks will be made. And also they allowed us to test protocols that we invented in laboratories and verify that those protocols are real and realistic. And ultimately, they're going to be the ones that host the large chunk of great services and interoperability bridges and Hydra channels and so forth. So we have, as a community, relationship with them. And the first question was, would you like to stick around to do some more work above and beyond what's coming on the Haskell side? So that was their vote, and leave on your pool past the 19th. Then we had to treat the ITN like its own thing. It's not Cardano, it's its own chain, it's doing its own thing. And we had to ask, well, do you guys want to keep this chain alive, owners of that chain? And that was the T-ADA vote. And although we built a tool, your vote, it didn't quite get out fast enough, and that's why there's been a lot of confusion and a little bit of issues on the messaging. But that's what's occurring right now, is that chain's trying to make a decision if they want to go and keep the experiment rolling. And if those two things happen, only if those two things happen, do we get to the third stage where the Cardano ecosystem as a whole gets asked, hey, what are we going to do? Do we want to take this other chain and do something with it that provides value to Cardano? And honestly, there's a very high threshold there. We had to make sure Ouroboros worked, so that's pretty high threshold because that's the heart of everything we do with Cardano. So, okay, that makes sense. But above and beyond that, the community as a whole has to come together, and at least 2/3 of the active stake has to make that decision of whether they actually want to have that chain do something. So the most likely outcome is the answer will be no, even if it's a really good idea, because that's such a high threshold for the entire community. The point is that this is the first time where people are actually free to go and express themselves and not follow a roadmap and say when Gauguin and when Shelley and when this and when are the wizards going to come down from their ivory towers and give us something. It's the first time to really think about, what does this all mean? Why are we doing what we're doing? Where do we want to go? What type of ecosystem do we want to have for Cardano? Implicit in this discussion is the concept of sidechains and our relationship to other cryptocurrency networks. For example, when I originally wrote Why Cardano way back in the day in 2017, I mentioned Cardano CL and Cardano SL. I said, hey, we have this primary ledger, settlement layer, and then we have all these other layers, these computational layers, and they're different. One might look a lot like Ethereum's computational model. One might look a lot like WASM. One might look like Yella. And maybe you want your ADA to be able to run smart or power smart contracts in these different models. Okay, well, we can do this in a feudal model or a captive model where those chains exist and just solely are secondary to the primary chain. Or we can do this in a partner model where they're actually their own system and we pay something for that system to recognize ADA. So it's almost like a blockchain to blockchain partnership. There's also the question of native tokens in Cardano. Cardano is going to be a multi-asset system. We're imminently approaching that. And if you're very clever, you can look at our GitHub repos and see the multi-asset specifications and realizations of these papers that we've published. And we'll have a lot to say about that vision at the virtual summit. And I think you guys are going to be very happy about the technological rollout of that. But then there's an open question of, if I issue an asset in Cardano, do I pay my fees with ADA or in the native asset? If we say ADA, we're like everybody else, like Ethereum with the ERC20 and so forth. If we say the native asset, then that opens up a completely different ballpark in game, because basically as an asset issuer, it's like having my own cryptocurrency. I can even perhaps have my own address structure with my own custom labeling. And then I pay fees with my tokens. So why would I want to go and create my own cryptocurrency? Why not issue in Cardano? And then you ask, well, how does that benefit ADA? Well, if you're paying your transaction fees in the native token, it means every single person who holds ADA, in addition to getting staking rewards in ADA, they would get part of those transaction fees in those native tokens. So as a thought experiment, imagine if this existed in Ethereum world. That means as a holder of Ether, if they had a system like ours, you'd get some Golem and some DAI, and you'd get some Link and whatever else is an ERC20 token in the system, in addition to your Ether from the staking rewards. Okay, is this something you're interested in or not? As a system architect, I can do A or B. However, somebody has to make that decision. And what's happening is we're starting to leave the everybody's aligned and everything is the same. And whether you're me, I'm you, we're going to make the same decisions. Let's go build a great network stack and great ledger rules and a beautiful consensus protocol. And now we're moving into the realm of philosophy and trying to make a decision. Are we going to be multi-chain or single chain? Are we going to be native assets that are captive to ADA, or native assets that are first-class citizens with ADA or not? And it turns out we have the capacity to go in either direction. But the community as a whole has to start making these decisions slowly. They're not going to be able to make those decisions. As we saw with the ITN, we kind of took a hands-off approach and said, all right, if ITN wants to be its own thing, let's see what the community behind the ITN does. And you noticed it wasn't quite where it needed to be yet. It still needed some shepherding. And that's exactly the case for every one of these major cryptocurrencies. If the Ethereum Foundation was to disappear tomorrow, it would create a lot of problems for Ethereum, despite the fact that they've been around for a long time. If any entity in the Bitcoin space was to go out of business, Blockstream or otherwise, it would not materially impact Bitcoin's evolution progress. So it does show you that Bitcoin in many ways is more decentralized on the decision-making development spectrum than Ethereum is. So similarly, we as an ecosystem have to aspire to move in that direction. But that does require a lot of innovation. It requires good voting systems, good voting experience, good information flow, good innovation management, divergent opinions, the ability to disagree without being disagreeable. And this is really a great challenge for the second half of 2020. As we open up the year, it's not just about getting decentralization and smart contracts, but also it's going to be a lot about how do we govern a system like this? How do we make decisions like this? And the power of the ITN experiment is it's a clear demonstration of the chaos of a decentralized system and how hard this really is. How hard it is to get accurate information without reliable sources, how hard it is to know which software to download, how to use that software. What are you really voting on? What's the broader purpose of this? What does failure mean? Why should you participate? What's your incentive for participating? Do you get anything for it? No matter how informed I'd like the community to be, there's an economic principle called rational ignorance, which means that the value of being informed is less than than the time you've had to spend to be informed. So in other words, you can spend days and days and days thinking about this, reading blog posts, watching my videos, talking to people. But if at the end of the day, your upside for that is less than the cost of the time that you've spent, the most rational thing for you to do is just not do it, not participate. And extend that to questions of, should we have native assets that pay fees with the own asset, or pay fees with ADA? Extend that to, how are we going to build our sidechains model? And are we going to go with like a blockstream style approach, primary, secondary, where they don't have their own tokens and they're completely subservient and controlled by the consensus system of Cardano? Or do we want to go to a partnership model where we can actually make deals with entire other cryptocurrency communities, maybe Hive or other people, and they get some ADA and we get some of their token, and basically there's a token partnership there? We can do either or these types of models, and the technology for this is sufficiently general that both of these systems will work. And in a way, we've already partnered with another cryptocurrency. Implicitly, that was the ITN. We partnered with that to run as a parallel system, and we paid them for 6 months out of the inflation pool of Cardano to basically give us a set of operators, test Ouroboros, and to really show that our assumptions were true, so that when we upgrade the main network, the $2 billion that's there has much lower probability of being at risk and being compromised. It was a small price for us to pay to get something like that. But that's a partnership. Anyway, so I just want to make this video and say that, with all things, the goalposts are really what you make them to be. And if the goalposts are here that we always do everything perfectly and everything's going according to some grand plan or design, you're never going to win, because even if that's your intent, this is a decentralized world of a system, and surprises happen, and black swan events happen, like this coronavirus and so forth. If your goalposts are to demonstrate to people how truly hard on-chain governance is, democracy is, and getting a decentralized ecosystem to act quickly, I think we've achieved a lot. I can see it in the frustration in the ambassadors. I can see it in the frustration in the community, and I can see it in the communications that we've had. People are starting to realize that this is not simple. Democracy is hard. Decision-making is hard. Consent is hard. And we're starting to realize that we're not as unified as we thought we were. And guess what? Every single cryptocurrency has that moment. So this is actually a major step forward for Cardano as a whole, as we start leaving the safety of a unified roadmap and we enter into the uncertainty of the real world, and we start truly decentralizing. We realize that actually keeping people unified, keeping people together, keeping people behind some broader concept is a truly great challenge. Now, here's the great part about that. If we achieve it, we're unstoppable, because people who have different philosophies, different languages, different cultures, different religions, different values, different perspectives have made a conscious choice to work together for a common set of principles and a common protocol. When you have that, you can overcome any law. When you have that, you can overcome any event, any black swan, a plague, a war, whatever it might be. When people have come together to work together, despite the fact that they're different, for a common good, nothing can overcome that, and you will always win. It's why it's so hard to accomplish, and why there's so much in society and life that is built from the ground up to prevent people from coming together. For example, in the United States, if we look at our media, it's not built for unification. It's built for division. All day long, the people in those groups focus on the things that make us different and the bad things that we do, and showcase why we should hate each other and why we should disagree with one group over the other. That is by design. It's not by accident. It's good business. It's good revenue for their particular model. But more importantly, it keeps society fractured. And then there's a group of people that are very, very good at operating in fractured society to maintain wealth and power. Should people start unifying, it's the single most terrifying thing to those people. Because that unification basically means that those people will be kicked out of power and society will change, and obviously wrong and bad things will actually get solved. Nothing is bad or wrong by accident in a big system. It's bad and wrong because somebody financially benefits from that. And cryptocurrencies are similar. Slowly, it was siloed. I remember as a kid, many of you do, I had to ride my bicycle in the rain to the library to get a book. And suddenly we moved to a world where information moved instantaneously. And that was a thought experiment of, well, could we put society into that same model? Can we put your reputation, your identity, your value, your property, your business, all these things into the cloud, into the internet, and somehow do what the internet did for information for them? Well, that's what the cryptocurrency and blockchain space is basically about. But in the process of doing that, we don't just put those entities into the cloud and suddenly start anew. All the things about humanity that lives in the real world will also get replicated in that world. Our cognitive biases, our inability to admit that we're wrong when we probably should, the problems we have in society with listening to each other and understanding each other, our lack of empathy on a collective sense, our tendency to follow strong men or great leaders and surrender our will to them. So cult of personality. And of course, basically the systems that were designed to control the old system will work their way into the new system. So all the tricks and trade of the media, the FUD, these things will work their way into our system as well. So the point of Cardano's first principles, the point of Cardano is try to do things a little differently and try to ask, well, what have we learned? And can we apply the best tools for this job? I can, with science, use the scientific method and peer review and involve the people who've devoted their lives to doing good science and bring them in and build a decentralized brain. We've accomplished that, guys. We've accomplished that as an ecosystem. No matter what happens, where I go, where IO Global goes, there will be hundreds of papers written over the next 5 or 10 years that are derivative works of the papers written for this project. And you as a community, we as a community, everybody together will all be recipients of that value created. Now I have the opportunity to dial it up and turn up the science even faster and get more into our ecosystem as a consequence of unlocking those doors and creating the right incentives model. But mission accomplished. So science is done. We have the right path and I can accelerate it, but it will happen inevitably. It's just a matter of, do you want it 10 years or do you want it 5 years? Okay. On the engineering side, we said we need to do coding differently. This is why we used Haskell and formal methods and why we said we have to do functional first, because we recognized there was a moral hazard. There was incentives for people to do a sloppy, fast job to get money up front, but then the people who pay for the consequences of that poor decision-making would be not the people who got the money, but the people who trusted the people who got the money. That's why the DAO hack was so pernicious and the parity failures and all these broken DeFi applications and so forth. And we said we have a moral obligation to do things differently as a project. Great. But the third great pillar, this concept of governance and sustainability, this concept of working with you guys, and saying, hey, we as a community do things differently. The problem is that nobody has come up with a perfect government. There are obvious advantages to the use of a math-based approach in software development, and we have 40 years of evidence to show that. There are obvious advantages to structured scientific thinking and peer review. We have 400 years of evidence in modern medicine and rockets in the sky and planes and cars and all these things that demonstrate, in the very computer I'm talking on, to demonstrate the obvious benefits of the scientific method. But yet you have to ask yourself, which government in the entire world, more than 190 governments, is working properly? Which corporation has perfect corporate governance? Which company have you worked for where you honestly woke up and said, every decision was made correctly? I always felt like I had a voice. I always felt like I've been listened to. And the answer is none. No one can point over the long run for all types of crises, whether it be sustaining resilience in the case of a crisis or making rapid decisions in the face of a crisis. No one has come up with a perfect system for that. So we as a project are now leaving the safe harbor that we've set up for ourselves, where we have certainty and absolute focus, into a world where no one has solved this problem. Now, we have some ideas, and you'll see a lot of those ideas come out at the summit. And I think a lot of people will be very excited about it and say, wow, we've made some leaps forward. And frankly, 200 years of political science and 200 years of careful thought and things like Arrow's theorem and all kinds of stuff has come up. So it turns out that we have a lot of tools to work with. And one of the beautiful things is that a lot of these tools didn't get used in society because they were bad ideas. A lot of these tools didn't get used in society because they were inconvenient to those who have power. And so instead of them being adopted, they got pushed away by design and purpose, because the people in power are very comfortable with the system the way it is at your expense and my expense. So for the first time ever, we now live in a situation where for 200 years of things that are sitting in a warehouse, we finally get to open up the doors, grab these tools, whether it be preference voting or delegative democracy or innovation management, all kinds of cool concepts. We get to open those doors, reapply them, and pull them and bring them into our system. The ITN vote, who cares if it succeeds or fails? There's a few hours left to see if we hit the participation threshold or not. But the lesson, again, we should be learning here is, why was it hard? It was hard because the tools weren't right. The support wasn't right. And that anger and that feeling that people have about it, productively, we can channel it into a conversation of, well, what needed to exist for me to have felt good about it? And in the month of July, we're going to start that conversation of things that we think will solve that problem. But that's our first step. And we're going to have to move quickly. And we're going to have to be clever about this. And there are no right answers or wrong answers. It's just, what do we value as a community? What do we want to achieve? Towards the end of the year, we're going to have to really think deeply and carefully about things like, how fast should the project move? And how should we innovate as a project? And where should that innovation exist? And based on what we fund and the architecture we choose, we'll answer those questions and also broadcast those answers to the entire cryptocurrency space. We tend to believe naively that innovation being as fast as possible is the right way. Yet somehow Bitcoin, the least innovative, the least capable, the least feature-rich of all cryptocurrencies, is the market leader by far, and the one that gets the most media attention and the most adoption by far. So perhaps fast-paced innovation has to take a backseat to stability, resilience, and consistency. On the other hand, there is a strong argument to make that if we get above a certain capability threshold, we can get mass adoption, millions to billions of people entering our system that the system currently doesn't have. And we move from just an asset, just something people trade and store value in and occasionally do some side things with, to something that can fundamentally transform society. If that's the case, then we have a very small window of time to dial it up to 11 and really maximize innovation as quickly as we can. Now, I have an opinion, but you know what? Charles Hoskinson, the founder of Cardano, is becoming less and less relevant. And now what's happening is you, the community, are becoming more and more relevant. And I get to share my opinion like y'all do, but at the end of the day, I will not be the one who makes that decision. It's going to be you, the community, that makes that decision. And it burdens on me to make a good argument why I think it should be A or B, to show how we can get that technology there or show how we can execute that strategy. But in the marketplace of ideas, it's just one of many that will come. And this project will be a failure if it's just one. We need many, because at the end of the day, it's the synthesis of ideas, the flow of ideas that matters, because no one is smarter than a well-informed, well-engaged, well-communicating crowd. Okay? So anyway, a few more hours left to vote. If you want to participate, if you hold T-ADA, your vote's there. And next month is going to be a really fun one from a governance perspective. And I think everybody's going to be so excited about it. And we're going to have some of the best conversations we've ever had in the history of our project soon. And a lot of these things about the direction of Cardano will start flooding into our Reddit. And it's going to empower a lot of people who have stayed silent previously to start speaking for the first time ever. And their voice is going to become more and more meaningful over time, and eventually the most meaningful. It's also going to force the acceleration of a lot of great concepts and tools. And, the burden is on me to try to get as many of those tools out into the domain and let people know that they exist. Like before I started, a lot of people weren't even aware that there were things like Condorcet and board accounts for preference ordering voting, and that perhaps preference ordering is a much better voting system for certain things than up-down votes or threshold voting, for example. You see, so that's a conversation we need to have. We need to demo and showcase these particular tools, and we're going to do our best job we can to do that. And this ITN vote, it's kind of the accidental project. We never got around to that Blade Runner, and so there was a great opportunity to kind of start the conversation for democracy and show that it's a frustrating one. But what encouraged me the most is that people hung together, and despite the fact that they got frustrated, and despite the fact that they thought that things weren't perfect or that things weren't handled the way that they should have been, they never lost faith in the project. And the fact that they cared so much was because they had so much faith in the project, and that really meant the world to me. And that really showed that our best days are ahead of us. I believe we're going to be the ones who solve this project. We've done great work on the mathematics side and the science side, and if that's all we ever accomplished, we built something that was beautiful and amazing and probably profitable. But I'd like to believe that we have the capacity to solve the bigger problem, which is the governance problem, the voting problem, the decision problem. And should we do that, it will be a great beacon for the world to look at and ask, why don't our governments behave this way? Why don't our corporations behave this way? Why can't we make decisions like this for our leaders? Why can't we make decisions like this for human rights and for what's illegal and what's legal? And then the burden will be on the legacy system to somehow say that what we've constructed is wrong. The more valuable the system becomes, the more people in the system, eventually you'll understand the hypocrisy and hollowness of the criticism of that. So this is, in fact, perhaps the greatest contribution Cardano can leave. There always will be use and utility. And as a business owner, of course, I'm going to try to maximize use and utility because I like making profit. I like hiring people. I like being able to have a big company and lots of employees and pay them well and give them good bonuses. That's fun. And, that's all great entrepreneurs want to do that. But at the end of the day, I'd like to also believe that the things that we do here really can have a chance to transform society above and beyond making things more efficient and profitable for people, but actually transform people's lives. And if we've learned anything from 2020, and the lockdowns and the riots and all the social discord that we're going through, it's that we all need to change the way that we do business from a governance perspective. And that's our great challenge as a project. And it's my belief that we have a good shot at fixing it because we have the right community, we have the right principles, we have the right tools, and they're coming fast, believe it or not. And ultimately, we have the right experiences as well. So make the best out of the ITN. If you're a TA holder, got a few hours to vote. As I said, the link's in my tweet, and I'll put it in the show notes. I believe it's called Your Vote. And whether that succeeds or fails has no impact on Cardano in the long term, no impact on the delivery of anything in the long term. And what we should ask, the right question is, what do we need moving into the future so that this is a good experience? So thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'm having quite a bit of fun. And I hope you guys are having some fun too. And, no matter where the passions sit, do remember that we all care about each other and we're all in this together. Okay? So I'll see you all at the summit. And I hope you guys attend. And I'm going to have so much excitement being able to share some of the cool things we've been working on. Cheers.